Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Nicole Campbell, and I'm honored to serve as the Dean of University College at the University of Oklahoma. And on behalf of University College, I would like to welcome you to today's wonderful event, This I Believe, OU. As the academic front door to the University College is proud to carry out several programs that help our first-year students understand the values that are held collectively by our community and to assist them in further developing the means for living well and thriving as college students and as citizens. This, I believe, OU was originally created in partnership with OU's Institute for the Study of Human Flourishing, funded through a grant from the John Templeton Foundation. That grant ended in August of 2018, and we are delighted to be able to continue hosting This I Believe OU. We would like to express our gratitude to the Institute for their support and for their leadership in the study of virtues and human flourishing, and I believe I saw Dr. Nancy Snow, the director. Doing terrific work with the Institute. I would also like to recognize all of the University College staff members and instructors who have joined us this afternoon and have helped to host this event. Would you raise your hand? Thank you. Specifically, I would like to thank our first-year learning and engagement team who have organized this program and have helped to make it an outstanding learning experience for the OU community. And that is Lori and her whole team. She took out my list. And so if you're a first year in a move of humility, she took out the whole list. So if you are part of our terrific first year learning and engagement team, would you please raise your hand so that we can thank you especially. Such a great team. And a big thank you to Zach Stevens, who will be our radio host this afternoon. This past fall, over 1,550 first-year students at OU participated in a Common Read program through their first-year Foundations courses. These students were introduced to the 9 virtues promoted through the Institute in the course textbook, OU Citizen, and the Common Read, the best-selling book, This I Believe, which includes 80 essays written by both famous and ordinary citizens. As students read these testimonies, beliefs, and personal philosophies, they considered the 9 virtues and examined their individual beliefs around them. And at the end of the course, students took time to reflect on the virtues they found to be the most meaningful in their lives by writing their own This I Believe essay. We have asked 4 of these students, along with 5 community members, to share their personal essays this afternoon. I invite you to consider each perspective shared this afternoon and to become inspired to grow in your own understanding of your unique perspectives and the virtues and experiences that shape them. Welcome to This I Believe OU.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the strength in honesty. Living a significant portion of my childhood in paralyzing fear at the hands of a family member was not the ideal upbringing. But the reality is that you can't control what people do to you. What I would realize, though, is that I can control myself and how I responded. That became crystal clear to me the day that I believed that honesty was a strength. My most powerful recollection of the virtue of honesty was when I was 12. It was a moment of palpable fear when I stopped and took a moment to be honest with myself about what was happening to me. I felt the toll of the abuse on myself and my siblings. I felt the suffocating panic on a regular basis, and it was incredibly painful. In that moment, I asked myself, was I going to allow another to hurt and control me? Was I going to be the one to break this cycle? And was I going to stand up for myself and be honest about what was occurring, regardless of the consequences? I chose the path of honesty, no matter how difficult it was. It was then that I realized the power of honesty and how it strengthened me. It was freeing. a massive weight lifting off my shoulders, the cuffs taken off. A chance to take a deep breath instead of a rushed, shallow one. A moment to realise that I wasn't okay, but I was going to be okay. I wasn't broken, I was strong, and I would overcome this as long as I let honesty guide me. I allowed honesty to transform me from the inside out. On the surface, my story may seem one of perseverance, and I can assure you there was plenty of that. But it's more about honesty to me. I needed to have an honest conversation with myself to have the courage to make change happen, and so that's what I did. This trauma shaped me, and honesty became the air that I breathed, the currency in any relationship that I held both professionally and personally, and allowed me to be unapologetically me. It became this inherent need to be myself in a genuine way, not in a selfish and hurtful way, but just what you see is what you get, no pretense. Through this process, I grew stronger, being honest to myself about who I was, faults and all, permitted me to be honest with others. It allowed me the space to ask myself, who do I want to be? And how do I want to live my life? How can I be a more honest wife, mother, friend, colleague, and member of society? There were so many pivotal moments in my life where honesty played a crucial role, just as it did in my childhood. For example, when my father passed away after a battle of alcoholism and depression when I was 16, I lost my mother to cancer not long after that. To the day that I chose to travel 16,913 miles from Perth, Australia, to Norman, Oklahoma, sight unseen, to start a new chapter of my life. And then to the day that I chose to marry my incredible husband, Craig, and start our own family in the United States. Honesty was right there with me, giving me the strength to help make the best decisions I could for my life and make me who I am today. Someone that I'm proud of, and someone that has the strength to tell my story. In the words of the famous American painter and writer, Walter Anderson, our lives only improve when we take chances, and the first and most difficult risk we take is to be honest with ourselves. Be honest with yourself and others. Be authentic. Trust your voice to speak out. And be the person that you want to be, not a product of your circumstances. There is strength in honesty, this I believe.
Take the first step today. I do believe that you can learn and experience a lot of things if you take the first step. Growing up in a conservative family in Liberia, my life's actions, activities, and experiences were limited to the confines of traditional values. Last of these principles consider the act of religiousness, value of education, and upholding and respecting my family. However, acts that seem socially explored or frowned upon, they are all discouraged. My transition from being a paid to a teen was characterized and reduced to home activities, school, spending time at my mother's boutique, and being deeply involved in my church activities. In 2016, I was awarded a scholarship to study in China for the final 2 years of my high school. While studying, I was exposed to many new adventures. For a long time, I was determined to disengage from every activity I had not experienced in the past. I was terrified of change. My school club lessons contain teachings of the significance of open-mindedness and stepping out of our comfort zone to pursue our interests. As a result, I slowly established new ways of learning, built an optimism, focused thinking capacity, and gradually developed a problem-solving ability. On a dance holiday evening in 2016, I spent my time watching YouTube videos. I discovered a dance video that I enjoy watching. I was inexperienced in dancing and afraid of trying out this new activity. And so I only continued watching many more videos. A few weeks later, after that one Saturday evening, I've been watching YouTube videos, my school was hosting a talent show. I desperately wanted to perform an act that represented my African culture. I then remembered the dance video from YouTube and decided to learn and perform it at a talent show. It was, however, a tough decision. Think of everything that could possibly go wrong. With my new approach to learning, to thinking, and solving problems, I took the risk and signed up to perform. I spent the next few weeks learning and rehearsing the performance to get it right. Sometimes we perceive risk to always come with a negative result. Believing that risk is an opportunity to learn more about yourself, while teaching yourself new ways to grow, help improve you, your skills, and your life at large. On the day of the event, I was still afraid and nervous. When I was called upon to perform, I took the courage and performed. Following my performance, I was applauded by the audience and received subsequent congratulations following the event. I felt appreciated and rewarded for taking a leap out of my comfort zone. This moment marked the beginning of a new journey for me. There are many ways to recognize a hidden talent. I do believe that the people around you are very important in recognizing their potentials. Listen to the applause you get. Observe what people nominate you for. This might be something that people think you are exceptional at. They see your potential. Now you have to work towards germinating whatever they have spotted. I started to learn more dance routines for performances. This was kind of a new passion for me, dance. After a semester, I studied the African Dance Organization on campus. I learned dances and then taught students and staff. We had many performances in and out of campus. Though I learned a lot from this experience, my most valuable virtues are my love of learning and open-mindedness. My love of learning enabled me to take the first step of learning the first move of the first choreography that I first performed. With my love of learning, I pushed myself to practice every day until I learned the dance competently. With open-mindedness, I had to believe that I could do it, even if it seemed way too difficult at first. I learned to erase my fixed mindset, that I could learn a move to bring forth my growth mindset that with consistent practice, I could learn how to dance. These two virtues have helped me a lot to become who I am today. I'm the founder of the OU Afrobeats Dance Club. I'm also a dancer in this year UBB Dancing with the Star. With these virtues, I can do so much because I believe that I can only know the limit of my potential if I actually do something. With these virtues, I am able to engage in many different new things that improve me personally and professionally. I do believe that by taking the first step with an open mind and love of learning, you can always push yourself to discover your hidden talents or knowledge that will enhance you and your life goals. In life, we are faced with many new challenges that seem to be impossible at first. We might want to give up at the sight of it because our fixed mindset says that we can't do it. However, we are missing an opportunity that will improve us. All we have to do is to take the first step. Make taking the first step a habit, and everything else will flow later. Look around you today. See things that are offered unto you. Look at what is available and that you are not making use of. You may have a reason for not doing these things. For most people, it is because of the fear of taking the first step, the fear of change. Take the first step today, actually taking the initiative to push yourself to start something that might not be comfortable right now, but needed to make you a better student, a better teacher, a better friend, a better partner, a better scientist, and so forth. It might not be within your comfort zone right now, but after engaging with it, you will most likely add it to your comfort zone. The bigger your comfort zone, the more lessons you learn. You can do anything, you can become anything as long as you want. And you believe everything you do is an opportunity to learn, and you work hard with a growth mindset. I'm going to listen to this, and I can't wait to hear you inspire others. Thank you so much.
If I were to ask all of you in the audience to list some of the core ideals upon which our society is founded, I can make a pretty good guess about the kinds of things that I would hear. Some of you might say liberty, or perhaps specific freedoms listed in the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, of religion, the right to bear arms. Still others, maybe the political science and history majors, might mention some specifics about our governing structure, representative democracy, civic republicanism, separation of powers, limited government. Some might say capitalism, for better or for worse. And still others might list more negative aspects of our society that have undeniably shaped our cultural and political life. Patriarchy, white supremacy, heterosexism, settler colonialism, Christian nationalism. The truth is, our broader society, like our university, is complex. And different narratives compete to try to encapsulate or summarize what our society is ultimately about. In fact, some have said that the greatest and most unique tradition that we share as Americans is that we constantly argue about what it means to be an American. If you ask the authors of the New York Times 1619 Project, you get one set of answers. And if you ask the authors of the 1776 report commissioned by former President Donald Trump, you get a completely different set of answers. I want to argue today that the individual and collective virtue of fairness represents our most precious and foundational ideal. I certainly don't mean to disregard or minimize the other intellectual, executive, or civic virtues. Our society is blessed when we, our institutions, and our laws embody those virtues, all of them. And we are all impoverished when they are in short supply. Yet without the individual and collective virtue of fairness, what I would define as the working out of justice and recognition of our full equality as human beings and citizens, we don't have the first prerequisite of what a good society takes, or good life. My key text for this claim is what many consider the founding document of our nation, the Declaration of Independence. But it wasn't always considered the founding document in the way that has shaped our national self-understanding the way it has today. When Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration, it was intended as a diplomatic document, announcing our independence to the rest of the world and explaining why these 13 British colonies were separating from Britain. It wasn't written as a profound statement of human rights like we take it today, and thus, early on, it did not take on this massive, almost religious cultural significance as it has now. That significance, as we understand it today, was largely placed on the Declaration decades later by Abraham Lincoln. It oriented his entire political philosophy, so much that he placed it in importance above the U.S. Constitution. He said in his speech, "I have never had a feeling politically that did not spring from the sentiments embodied in the Declaration of Independence." But what exactly did Lincoln find in the Declaration that was so important? What ideals conveyed in that document did he think were the foundation of our society? We actually find our answer to that question in Lincoln as he began his Gettysburg Address in 1863. In the middle of the Civil War, he said famously, "47 years ago, you've heard this, our fathers brought forth from this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to what? To the proposition that all men are created equal." That is the civic virtue of fairness as I understand it. Full legal equality as citizens. And Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident," meaning we don't have to argue for them. They justify themselves. That what? That all human beings are created equal. Now, did Jefferson mean equal in talent or resources or social esteem? No, of course not. Clearly not. Jefferson meant, he and the founders meant, as citizenship, or citizens as he understood them, could expect governmental fairness, full equality under the law. Now, clearly, Jefferson and the revolutionary generation did not live out or apply the full meaning of that claim. Ironically, not by a long shot. Ironically, in fact, their understanding of legal equality excluded most of the population. Whites who didn't own property, racial minorities, women, and often many religious minorities. But that is where Lincoln looked to truly center this understanding of fairness, of full legal equality as the nation's core ideal. In fact, Lincoln interpreted the Civil War conflict as a fight between those who believed in the Declaration's promise of full legal equality and those who rejected it. And eventually, as the Civil War was drawing to a close, Lincoln insisted that any restoration of rebel secessionist states to the Union must rest on the principle of civil and political fairness, specifically equality between black and white Americans. Like Lincoln, today. I would argue that the history of our society, and perhaps even our development as a species, could be viewed in terms of both the tragic consequences of refusing to live up to this individual and collective virtue of fairness, and our modern attempt to correct for the consequences of failing to live up to that virtue. In fact, so many of the challenges that we face today as individual citizens, as a university, and as a society are about the consequences of unfairness and taking the hard medicine that is needed to rectify that unfairness. Only then can we realize a society where all human beings are equal, not necessarily in their outcomes, but in their opportunities. For example, our society is currently beset by its legacy of both individual and systemic unfairness inflicted upon racial minorities. But those past failures carry consequences today. The legacies of racial unfairness in the form of Jim Crow segregation, voter suppression, job discrimination, held in place by everything from laws to domestic terrorism, can still be seen in the wealth and health inequalities that we can observe today. Now, an overly simplistic understanding of fairness would be for us all to simply agree that we individuals will no longer discriminate or treat individuals unfairly. But that limited understanding of fairness would ignore how previous unfairness shapes future outcomes for all. Consider this analogy when I share with my students. All of us have likely played the board game Monopoly. Imagine that I have been cheating at Monopoly for years. And as a result, I've been able to accumulate all of the properties and all of the utilities and all the money. Does it suddenly make the game fair if I simply promise to stop cheating from here on out? No, of course not. Because I still maintain all of my ill-gotten advantages. You will still lose. I will still win. And what if I could pass down my advantages in this game to my children and my grandchildren? Then we have a situation where one generation has never intentionally cheated, but they still get to enjoy the advantages and privileges of their ancestors who cheated, while all the other players must endure the disadvantages of past cheating. I think we can agree, true fairness in the fullest sense would require present correction for past injustice. As I speak to you today, the legacies of pervasive unfairness have locked individuals into divergent pathways, where the outcomes will inevitably be different because their opportunities are fundamentally different. That is unfair. And when the unfairness is systemic, the corrective fairness must also be systemic. What we need is a generation of young people like you. Young people who will become teachers, artists, parents, managers, pastors, real estate agents, and lawmakers, who are committed to the same vision that animated Abraham Lincoln. A group of people who are committed to the virtue of fairness at all levels, individual, institutional, legal, and political. A group of people who will fight to finally realize a society that is characterized by fairness in the fullest sense of that term, the working out of justice, and the recognition of our full equality as human beings and citizens. This, I believe, fairness must be the foundation. We can start in our own lives and our own university, but we must carry the virtue of fairness to our community, our nation, and our world. Thank you.
Imagine you're 16 years old, living in a country where you're always reminded of the fact that you're different and welcome. Everywhere you go, you hear words like, I'd rather die here and stay here and watch these good-for-nothing criminals who call themselves refugees take away our jobs and dirty our culture. Or someone stood proudly and said in your face, go back to where you come from, because that's where you belong. I'm sorry for starting with such a surreal term. I just couldn't think of a better way because those words always reminded me of how far I've come. And though excruciating, they always serve as a guide to where I'm headed. Growing up in Sierra Leone, West Africa, a mining community that is inhabited by people who could barely read and write, and that's including my parents. My imaginations were always centered around what life would be like beyond the borders of our impoverished society. Even though I do not believe in luck, because to me, luck is a product of an action. However, I would say I was very lucky to have parents who were aware that the only way I could make my imagination a reality is by having the education and good luck. So at age 6, they sent me off to the city where I could go to school. I don't remember ever having the opportunity to be around them for over 3 consecutive months. Despite that, I've never questioned their love for me, nor have I ever had a doubt of how grateful I am to them for the sacrifice they made to see me achieve my dream. In the city, I handled my schoolwork with both hands and made my strive for education my topmost priority. Everything is great. Then, on November 3rd, 2013, the cold hands of death snatched my father away from us. Suddenly, just after 3 years of his demise, it felt like the whole world was crumbling at our feet. My single mom couldn't keep up with the expenses of sending me to school while catering for my 3 other siblings. My dream came to a standstill. I was 16. My father's death felt like a huge defeat that I wasn't ready to accept. So I left home and moved to Gaye in search of a job, without knowing anyone there. The journey of 1,000 miles began at the very first step, they say. In my case, that can't be less true. As within 6 months after I left home, I had already traveled through 6 countries towards Northern Africa. Alone, homeless, and undocumented. After a year filled with great tribulations in the hands of human traffickers, a horrendous journey across the borders, deserts, and the vicious Mediterranean Sea, I finally arrived on the coast of Calabria, a southern region in the beautiful country of Italy. To be honest, it felt great to wake up one morning and say, I live in Italy. My dreams of achieving the education I've always dreamt of eventually became fresh in my mind. However, I was a clandestine, an undocumented non-migrant. I couldn't attend school because I needed to be a legal resident. Moreover, I needed to at least know the Italian language. As a foreigner, these were reasonable and expected challenges that I was expecting. What I wasn't prepared for was having to struggle with the emotional burden of rejection because of being an immigrant in a country where many see me as a threat. I ended up spending 2 years of my life buried in fear of the world beyond the walls of the different refugee camps I lived in. I do not have the superpowers to control society's reaction towards me. However, to what extent I will allow an event to have an impact on my life depends on how I react to it. I was in Europe, a modern society, where access to the internet and technology is almost free. With these, education is just one step away. I began studying the Italian language, using mobile applications and an internet facility that was about 4 kilometers away from our refugee camp. I would work every day to have a chance to study and meet locals who were willing to have a chat. As months passed by, I began having mediocre conversations in Italian. Within 2 years, I was set to attend high school. Upon my 18th birthday, and as an adult, I could no longer stay in the refugee camp. I had to move out and fend for myself. I got stuck with having to make a big decision in my life between 2 choices: pursuing my quest for education and getting a job that I needed badly at that moment. After applying for so many jobs without getting called back, I was left with no other option but to settle for jobs that would pay me less than other people. Then came an opportunity at a time when I was already prepared. I applied for a scholarship, a university scholarship, and got accepted. Lucky is what many people would call it. To be honest, the first time in school was not easy. Being a dropout for almost 4 years affected me in many ways. I would read the book for hours without taking in any information. I had no reading for learning. I started questioning whether I was good enough. I lost my self-esteem. and began suffering from insomnia as I would cry myself to bed every night. I almost gave up. I fought harder until things began getting better. My grades improved and I built my confidence. The fact that I am here today as a swimmer is an unimaginable milestone I never thought I would achieve a few years ago. Today, as I continue my journey here in the United States of America, as the first person from my family to reach this milestone, and as I continue my strive in achieving that life I imagined as a young kid growing up in rural Sierra Leone, I believe my achievement so far is because I didn't give up in my dreams and got myself prepared and taking up opportunities when they arise. The things I have endured throughout my journey, the excruciating 2 words from the man who told me to go back to where I came from, and the memories of my people back home are what inspires me to never give up. I believe in the power of imagination that is backed up with an action. My action have inspired me to be the voice of many migrants and refugees who are in a past situation, and that has taken me to nearly 17 countries as an advocate. My actions has inspired me to promote education. In the village where I had that dream of a better life, and today, I've implemented a sanitation project for the only primary school in that community. I'm still looking forward to my very first scholarship initiative to outstanding students whose parents cannot afford sending them to secondary school. I'll simply summarize my belief with the famous lines of Hermann Hesse. I have always believed, and I still believe, that whatever good or bad fortune may come our way, we can always give it meaning and transform it into something of value. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Juan. The title of my piece is Echale, Ganas, Mijo, and the virtue that I chose is perseverance. It's mid-fall at Truman Elementary. The leaves are changing color, and the sweet summer breeze is finally turning into brisk autumn air. Then, unexpectedly, the universe blows a wind of change into my classroom. A young, brown-eyed boy with dark hair and caramel-colored skin walks through the blue metal door frame in my classroom. His name is Samuel, and he looks just like me. His family has recently moved to the United States from the Mexican state of Oaxaca, and I am his first American teacher. Hola Samuel, I say. Yo me llamo Señor Renteria, y me da mucho gusto de tenerte en mi clase. Seeing this boy, like seeing myself, and in this moment, despite my fears of being a first-year teacher, I begin to believe that I can truly make a difference in the lives of my students. I am a bridge. A unique experience as a first-generation student pushed me to bridge the gap between 2 cultures. I had to learn 2 languages, differing customs, and figure out how I could exist between the 2. Echale, Ganas, Mijo, my parents would always say to me. Give it your best, son. Having Samuel in class offered me an opportunity to give it my best one day. Samuel showed me what I had to offer as a teacher. And being that cultural bridge for him, I was able to celebrate his diversity in a way that didn't erase his character, but highlighted it to the rest of the classroom. By encouraging Samuel to speak in his native language, I was able to bridge what he learned in Mexico to his new American school. Echale ganas, mijo, I would say to Samuel. This I know, that we need men and women of all colors and backgrounds in our schools. Diversity has long been a characteristic that has made our country great. The combination of peoples, ideas, and cultures have allowed the United States to become a world leader, as well as a beacon of hope. As teachers, our collective experiences will allow us to bridge the gaps with our students and help cultivate learning environments based on which we respect, acknowledge and celebrate diversity, and encourage personal growth. I am a formidable voice. As an educator, it is my responsibility to lend my voice to the underrepresented. I believe equity in education is an important factor to consider. in our schools today. We should provide communities of diverse learners with appropriate educational opportunities that will allow them to grow and to persevere. Additionally, I believe it is my duty to amplify the voices of diverse parent groups so that they may take their place as legitimate stakeholders at their respective school settings. Growing up, my parents helped me find my own voice, and now I get to do the same for others. As a teacher, I continue to use my voice to advocate for my students and to show them that their voice is just as beautiful and as powerful as mine. The last 2 school years have stretched educators in unimaginable ways. We restructured our classrooms, our curriculum, as well as our teaching strategies. We've had to tear down our existing ideas of education and build new learning environments for our students and families. If this pandemic has taught me anything about teachers, it is that we are resilient, adaptive, and intelligent. We will persevere. I am but a single piece of a wondrous and intricate puzzle. By bridging Samuel to the rest of the class, he was able to eventually use his own voice to shape his learning experiences. Through inclusivity, this young boy felt safe, loved, and valued, which ultimately allowed him to collaborate with those who looked and spoke differently than he did. As teachers, it is so important that we highlight the power of inclusivity and collaboration. These 2 core values work hand in hand and serve to positively affirm the identity of our students while bringing greater value to our collaborative efforts despite any cultural, political, religious, or socioeconomic differences. When a school promotes collaboration within its staff, something happens. The atmosphere changes. Miracles happen. When students and teachers alike become critical pieces of a wondrous and intricate puzzle. My school, Truman Elementary, brings me so much joy. Collaborating and connecting with my colleagues is something that has been valued and supported since even before my time at school. My Truman family continues to work hand in hand, and we continue to uphold a school culture that relies heavily on building connections and investing in relationships. The hard but pivotal moments will serve to only strengthen our school, and through the peaks and the valleys, may we teach our students that we all have a purpose and that we are all loved. In a way, I was just like someone my first day at Truman Elementary. I was a younger, brown-eyed boy with dark hair and caramel-colored skin who walked through the blue metal doorframe of classroom 104. My rewards are the lessons I've learned from my students, my colleagues, and most importantly, myself. Whether it's learning to be a bridge or learning the power our voices have, may I continue to be a lifelong learner who understands the value of persevering. Thank you.
I believe in 4, 7, 8 breathing. I believe in inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7, and exhaling for 8. Sitting on the roof of your house, gazing up at the small pinpricks of light dotting the night sky, the world feels like too much to you. Too much pollution, too much hatred, too much violence and conflict and grief. It all feels too violent, and you feel too soft. The night air makes the tears cold and sticky on your face. You are 11 years old and wondering what would happen if you touched the electric wire running across the house. You are 11 years old and you don't see any light on the horizon. Take a breath. Breathe in for 4. Let the oxygen fill your lungs and expand your chest. Hold for 7. Clear your mind. Exhale for 8 counts, letting your shoulder blades relax and your posture collapse. Repeat. The stage lights are up, the spot is set, and your entrance is quickly approaching. Your cast members play on stage, delivering their lines rapidly to a full house. You are 15 years old, and this is the opening night of your freshman year play. Your heart is pumping so quickly that you can hear the buzz of blood rushing through your body. Your hands are trembling, your mouth is dry, Your mind is blank with fear. The itchy velvet of your costume makes it hard to focus, and you fiddle nervously with your overly highlighted skirt. You close your eyes. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 7. Out for 8. You take to the stage, and you kill it. It's the summer of 2016. You are sitting in your family living room, eyes wide as dinner plates, with cold fear clawing slowly through your chest. You've just arrived home from school. On the TV, CNN is replaying news footage of fearful people fleeing into the street. The tag at the bottom of the screen reads, "Mass shooting at Pulse nightclub." You watch the testimony of grieving friends and parents. You listen to the stories of shocked bystanders. Tears prick at the corners of your eyes as the disbelief starts to dissolve and the sadness begins to settle in. You are 13, and this is the first mass shooting that you really understand, that you fully grasp the meaning and the bloodshed and the context of. You hold your mother close and continue to watch the broadcast, questions curling around your thoughts, beginning to suffocate your mind. Stop. Breathe in for 4. Acknowledge the anger. Hold for 7. Hope for a better day. Out for 8. Do not allow the fear to control you. Repeat. It's 2010 on the West Coast. The car radio softly plays Yellow Submarine by the Beatles, and the Californian air is sweet and cool and fresh as it caresses your hair and cheeks. The windows are open, and you can see the rolling hillsides, a mixture of palm trees and forested mountains where large coastal houses polka dot the light green countryside. Your father softly hums along with the music. Your eyes are heavy as you lean your head against the car window. You are 7 years old, and your heart feels like it's going to overflow with joy. You breathe in for 4, promising to commit this moment to memory. You hold for 7, letting peace and happiness fill your heart. You exhale for 8, willing this day to stay with you forever. I believe in 4-7-8, in slowing down life, in appreciating the intrinsic extraordinariness of the ordinary, in valuing your human experience enough to give your body oxygen and allow yourself to truly be alive, just for a single moment. In 2022, the world sometimes feels too fast to keep up with. The internet provides a constant stream of news and information, both good and bad, alongside an expectation to keep up with everyone and everything around you. Generation Z faces an identity as one of the most educated age groups to ever live on Earth, as well as one of the most mentally depressed, ill, anxious, and lonely generations. We are addicted to this sense that we have to rise and grind to make our life meaningful, that we must outdo each other, that competition and capital alone create joy, that work and career are the most important things in life. We have become convinced that every single action we take must contribute to a grand sense of saving the planet and making meaningful change. And as a result, we feel guilty for our happiness when it organically occurs. It has taken me my whole life to realize that constant grind is not as productive as intentional rest. It has taken me 18 years to learn that perseverance is not a perpetually uphill battle, that progress is not linear, nor is it meant to be. Sometimes when the rush of the world feels overwhelming, the best thing to do is to slow down and allow yourself a restart. I believe in 4-7-8, in taking the moments to appreciate the turning of the globe, the distant plum and clementine hues of a rising sun, the dust dancing in the light beams of an ancient church window pane. I believe in meditating on your decisions before you take action, of facing the silences in life, even when they scare you the most. Because to me, a breath is more than a breath. It is an expression of humanity, a contract for the chance to continue existing, and an acknowledgement of the fact that you are alive. You are breathing, you are experiencing, taking part in a ridiculous, awe-inspiring, terrifying, joy-inducing process of being a human. You are sunshine. You are butterflies. You are hurricanes and betrayal and grief and heartbreak. To me, a breath is a promise of perseverance, an assurance that you will continue getting up, that you are dedicated to starting over, that you recognize yourself as one of the millions in a long line of human beings, all eating and playing and messing up and falling in love on this small blue dot of a planet. To breathe is to continue learning, to continue fighting, to commit to the human experience. I believe in the quiet perseverance of life on Earth. I believe in 478. Thank you.
I believe in the American dream. I believe in an America where anything is possible, where dreams can become reality for those who work for it. I believe a dream is different for everyone. Let me give you some background. I was born in Ukraine, a developing nation in Eastern Europe. I was adopted by a family of immigrants from Spain and India. I was definitely the misfit of my family. My father always had a dream of owning his own business. In 2014, that dream became a reality. My father says, if you want something, you work for it. I learned that quick from my childhood. He wanted a business. My father wanted to start his life in America along with his grandparents. And his father before him wanted to find a home for his 6 children. My family has lived in many places in the United States, from Florida, California, and New York, as well as recently in Colorado. I spent majority of my summers and winters in Colorado, helping with my grandparents and the countless cousins in my family. In my grandparents' house, Italian could be heard along with English renderings. From my uncle from Spain was speaking Spanish and always have a good time. My grandparents' house always had pictures of back home in Europe. Besides those photos were places in America that they had visited, like Mount Rushmore, Washington, D.C., and New York City. The American dream was always alive with my family. So what exactly do I think about the American dream? And how is it different from my grandparents' generation to now? When I hear it, I think of a time that I got to witness a group of immigrants become United States citizens. My family and I had gone to Boston during the summer of 2019. It was midday, beautiful weather in Old Town Boston. In the courtyard of the Old North Church, a group of soon-to-be American citizens held up their right hand to recite the Oath of Allegiance. My family stopped and observed in silence and to show respect. After the oath, they announced, "I would like to congratulate you on becoming a United States citizen." Tears filled the eyes of the crowd of people as they were handing their certificate of citizenship. Families hugged their loved ones and smiles came across every face. That memory comes across my mind every time I hear about the American dream. My family and I joined the crowd to congratulate them as well. Complete strangers that I shall never see again embraced me as we felt a unity of one big family. One young lady was from Syria and had fled her home, which was now in ruins. She had 3 small children, with smiling and holding American flags. The native language was Arabic, yet we shared a language that all humans know, which is joy and relief. As for me, I was gifted American citizenship through the adoption program I was in. With this, Ukraine's government also let me keep my original citizenship, making it so I have dual citizenship. I am thankful every day for my gift of American citizenship and treat it with respect. I am also aware of a new meaning to the American dream, which is to fight for civil rights, a meaning to a right to an abortion, and right to peacefully protest, and the right to a speedy and fair trial, and the right to be free. The America I know and love has many scars on her face, from the forceful removal of the first peoples of America to the treatment of African Americans during slavery and today, the discrimination of immigrants and the removal of DACA and other resources. All these events tell a story. The story of America, and American citizens that are new and old must be aware to fight for a people of all America. For everyone has an American dream, and do not deny someone the right to their dream. This I believe. Thank you.
Being a brown Latinx woman in the U.S., I'm no stranger to the struggle that exists etched onto my skin. Yet, having been born a citizen, while I am no friend of indifference, I had always been acquaintances with careful inaction. I didn't live in fear that my entire life as I knew it would be uprooted. But I always worried for my family and friends who were at risk for deportation. I didn't have to experience the existential horror embedded in the daily life of an undocumented immigrant. But in high school, I did have to live through the racial violence that comes as a response whenever the subject came up in conversation with other students. It always felt safer to be cautiously silent and not stir up any trouble. My parents shared that sentiment. They strayed away from anything that would make them engage with their immigration status and feared that someone could cause a scene or worse. Although my parents don't struggle with that issue anymore, it still left a huge imprint in our lives. My older brother, however, was not interested in that kind of safety. He would perform his poetry at immigration and racial justice rallies, tearing his soul asunder that someone might find solace in his words. My parents and I never understood why he insisted on being so unabashed about his immigration status in such public forums. We didn't understand what he was calling attention to us. It felt like he was inviting trouble for the sake of a few poems. But for his sake, I decided to accompany him to a protest. He was going to perform at a rally protesting the child detention camps and the decision to bring one to Fort Sill here in Oklahoma. These kids, in a way, were just like me. Whenever I saw them or heard about the conditions they were held under, I think that under slightly different circumstances, it could have been me. It broke my heart. Fueled by the heartbreak and discomfort I felt, discovered at the fact that this is the reality we live with, I decided to research Fort Sill. What I found were echoes. Ripples made by the same racially violent drop upon once calm waters. I saw the history of Fort Sill as an internment camp for Japanese Americans, held against their will just because of their racial identity. I learned that Native Americans, too, were held at Fort Sill. I saw the way colonialism mutates itself and yet always remains recognizable. Fort Sill stood in my mind as a metaphoric of that colonial violence that seeks, with its carceral technologies, to make the racialized other both a scapegoat and a specter. Frankly, I was filled with anger and an impotent despair. I felt like no matter how much we work to end racial injustice as we see it now, it will always slither and shift into a different and more subtle mode of violence. So with my heart heavy with grief, I went to the protest. The smoldering sun ripped itself onto my skin, making my body feel the weight my heart felt. The energy was exciting. Chants and songs announced our demands with such might it was impossible not to be compelled to join in. The ghost of the ever-adapting colonial racism haunted every step I took. We stopped. There were speeches, and then it was my brother's turn to speak. He recounted a moment where he felt he had failed to help me process a racist event that had happened to me,
and then went on to give words to the feelings I had been carrying all protest. What does it even look like to win? His words struck me as tired and pained, as if he had just been discharged from the hospital, but emotional. Victory is not a piece of legislation. I was instantly filled with dread, recoiling at the idea that the most materially consequential solution would still fail to address the problem. But I knew in my heart it was true. Just as Fort Sill was home to the ever-changing face of colonial violence, so too would that violence adapt and enact its forces in a different way once immigration reform is passed. Victory is not a what. Victory is a who. Victory is you. Those words still ring in my mind. At that moment, I realized I had been searching for some semblance of justice that would be given to us by society, some change a lawmaker or a judge would make. But the end of that poem made me realize that justice isn't found in some legal rectification of an injustice, but that's always temporary. But instead, I believe justice is found in the value and sacrifice we find in one another. I looked around and saw hundreds of people, many with tears in their eyes, and I understood. As long as the love we have for one another propels us to rectify the material consequences of racism and colonialism, we have achieved a justice that is pure and innate within that struggle. Every single person there was an avatar of justice because they knew, to varying degrees, how difficult it would be to create a better world for everyone, and they were there nonetheless. In this unity, I found resolve. The resolve to never again be silent in the face of an injustice, and the resolve to keep fighting for that better world regardless of the outcome in the moment. Because the justice in us, our victory, is as infinite as the struggle it confronts. Justice will always be accompanied by those that hold it in its heart. And that's company I will never be estranged from, ever again. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This, I believe, compassion is the most important virtue in our modern world. And I believe that because our future depends on how much we care about this planet and each other. And I want to try to explain what I mean by that by sharing with you a few stories, recent stories that I've been involved with. Before I do that though, I want to talk a little bit about what compassion means to me. For me, compassion is a deep, deep care and concern for oneself as well as others. We can even extend that and should extend that to the planet. But compassion is about a deep care and concern for oneself and others. And so when we think about compassion and why compassion is so important, I want to help you to understand how compassion plays a role in my career. I'm a historian of lynching and racial violence. I study some of the ugliest episodes, the most violent episodes in American history, in this country's history. And because I've done that work for over 20 years, it's become my mission to tell the stories of America's Black victims of racial violence from 1619 into the present. And so for me, my work is about trying to help students care about America's Black victims of racial violence, because for 400 years, we have not cared about those victims, the survivors, or even the descendants. And so I believe I can hopefully transform our relationship as a country to this bloody history by convincing students to care about those people and their lives and their stories. And so my main mission in the classroom is not to get students to understand. That's a part of it. That's the gateway to getting them to care about those stories and about those individuals, because their lives matter and they still matter today. And so by us caring about it and caring about not just the history, not just understanding the history, but the people affected by that history, caring about that, we can actually transform our relationship to the history of slavery and racial injustice in this country. So at the heart of my teaching is trying to teach students to care, not just to know. And so why this is so important for me is I've witnessed in the last 4 years how one person, just one person, caring, having a deep care and concern for someone else, transformed, changed the world. I'm going to say one name right now, and that name is Julius Jones. And just by a show of hands, I want to see how many of you know the name Julius Jones. Can you just raise your hands? Thank you. Most of you in this room know Julius Jones, who Julius Jones is in 2022. But if I were to ask you that same question, who of you in this room knew the name Julius Jones in 2018? By a show of hands. In 2019, by a show of hands. 2020, by a show of hands. Okay. 2021, we're getting warmer. Okay. In 2022, we all are familiar with Julius Jones. What many people don't know about Julius Jones and the Justice for Julius movement is it began in many ways right here on the campus of the University of Oklahoma. And the reason why it began here at the University of Oklahoma is C.C. Jones Davis, who became the director, the founding director of the Justice for Julius movement, reached out to me October of 2018 and said, Dr. Hill, I need your help. What she was really saying to me was, Dr. Hill, I need you to care about something that I care about. She started to tell me the story of Julius Jones. She began to relate to me how his story of his imprisonment was so unjust that after she watched the movie, The Last Offense, the documentary, The Last Offense, that features the story of Julius Jones, she watched that film in the summer of 2018 and was profoundly moved and said, as a housewife, right, in this Oklahoma, I would be turning my back on everything who I am if I don't stand up for that man, if I don't try to fight for this man's life. She came to that conclusion after watching The Last Offense and was fundamentally changed. And from that point on, she set about trying to figure out how to make the public aware in Oklahoma initially and then everywhere else about this man's story. And so that brings me to October 2018, and she says, I need your help. I need to find a way to bring the community together. I need a space. I know there's some space at OU. Is there anywhere on campus that we could host a meeting? And I said, yes, we can. Because she needed to hear that I care, and I did. What I didn't know is that this small group of people, about 12 people that came together in our office in the Clarendon Department of African American Studies, those individuals would go on to create a mass movement. And so in 2018, there was about a handful of people who cared about Julius Jones. And those individuals began to care about Julius Jones because C.C. Jones Davis decided to care about Julius Jones. And so over the year, from 2018 to 2019 to 2020, and certainly in 2021, the Justice for Julius movement grew from about 3 or 4 people to millions of people around the world. And what people sometimes don't realize is that movement started because one person decided that they cared enough about one individual who they believed had suffered injustice. They believed that that injustice other people should care about. And they were right. When other people were made aware, when other people knew the injustice of his story, they began to care too. And I believe as my grandmother would say, the onlyest reason Julius Jones is alive today is because C.C. Jones Davis decided to care, and she enabled millions of other people to care. And so when I say the currency of our modern world is caring, I mean that. Because when we care about something and someone, we give value to their lives. When we choose to care about the planet, we give value to the planet. And so caring is the true currency of our modern world. In our world, our planet will rise and fall on how much we care about it and each other. I'm going to close by trying to help you to understand what it truly means to care and to live a life of caring. I'm a historian of lynching and racial violence, but most foremost, I'm a humanist. And what that means is I love people on their best day and on their worst day. On their best day and on their worst day. And the reason why I can say that is what the human condition is, right? We're never all good and we're never all bad. And so loving people means embracing that, accepting that people are gonna have really bad days and they're gonna do horrific things. At the same time, in that same body, there's beauty. It may be a beautiful mess, but there's a beauty there too. And so you have to love people on their best day and love people on their worst day. And if we can strive to do that better every day and every day and every day, we will save this planet. This planet will be the planet that we want if we can just learn to care and work to care harder and harder every day. This I believe. Thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause to all of our I'm Lori Stevens, and I direct first-year learning and engagement here at the University of Oklahoma. And I just wanted to thank you for coming out today and taking the time to hear other stories. There's a quote from Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, that we love and use a lot in conversation about this program, about the common need. Just feel like it really encapsulates what we're trying to do here. That quote is, "There's power in allowing ourselves to be known and heard, in owning your unique story, in using your authentic voice, and there's grace in being willing to know and hear others." We're so grateful for our speakers for coming and sharing their unique stories with us today. And we're so grateful for you for coming and being willing to hear others. So give yourselves a round of applause. As we exit today, I want to invite you to share your own I believe statements on the whiteboard outside this theater. Grab an expo marker, give it some thought, and share something that you believe in. We'd love to share that with the greater Reading community or social media as well. And if you haven't already, there's a QR code that will appear on the screen that you can use to assess the event if you'd like any thoughts. And if you are taking your day because you're taking a class, then you can also check in using the QR code. And there'll be treats on the way out, so we hope to return to reception next year. But this year, we're going to grab treats for you, and